Hello, ladies, and all you vital, relevant people at home and those who want to be. I'm Lydia Ruth. Please click the link in the description box and go to the place where this has been embedded so you can see the rest of the story on the page, on the post. I really, really appreciate it. And then you don't have to put up with ads over there. So it's down at the end of the post, and the link will take you directly over there. And welcome to Homemaking Radio. I'm here at the man's in the sewing room. I haven't really shown you much of the sewing, but behind these little curtains that I have hung up, I've got, sewing books and a bit of fabric up there and some down here. And just to give the room a less cluttered look, I hung curtains across all the shelves. And sometime when I get it all fixed up and staged really nice, I'll get a picture for you of the sewing room. I also have two little single beds in here so that I can have company. And of course, I've got a kettle over there and everything they need. And so today is a special day because I'm going to just talk. I'm not going to lecture you about homemaking or getting dressed or anything like that. I'm going to talk about people, and it's going to be the people in Wives and Daughters, because they apply so much to things that go on today. For those of you who have just bought the video series, you might like to know what it's all about. It always helped me to read ahead as to what a movie was about so that I could understand it without having to figure it out as I watched it. And in general, what it is about two or three families that intermingle in this place called Hollingford, and it seemed like it was in Scotland, but I am not sure. And by the way, Elizabeth Gaskell wrote several books, and one of them was North and South, about the cotton mills in England. And it is, you can see it free on Freevee, which comes from, it's a free app from Amazon, and you just put the app on your phone, and it doesn't cost you anything, and they have it on there. They have the whole series on there, so someone must have asked them for it, but that's what the icon looks like. It's that little green one there, and it's Freevee, and they have North and South on there, which is, and they have Persuasion, and there's North and South right there, North and South, and they have Persuasion and Emma and a lot of other things on there. But I would suggest, if you're going to watch Persuasion or Emma, watch the 1995 versions. They're just more like the book, and they're more classical, and they don't try to modernize the character or anything. And so I just wanted you to know about that. North and South is on Freevee right now. And so I'm going to be enjoying watching that sometime again. And she has several others. She wrote Cranford, and she wrote, there were a couple of others she wrote that can't think of what the names of them right now, but I'm going to give you a little summary of this, just the videos. She had so many chapters. Look how thick her book is. So many chapters that I can't go chapter by chapter. There were 60 chapters. 60 chapters. All of them, I guess, quite short. But it's about these three families that intermingle. And the first one, I think, would be Dr. Gibson, and he's a widower, and he has a daughter. The movie starts out with her as a child being invited to the to Lord and Lady Cumnor's place at the Towers. I don't know where they got these names, but then they also had friends who were the Hamleys at Hamley Hall. I don't know what Dr. Gibson's place was called, but I'm interested in that they got these names for their places. And so it opens up that Molly gets invited with all the other little girls at all the other children at Hollingford, because this is what these people did every year for them. And then the next scene just goes into her being 17 years old, and I love the clothes, the simple cottons and the little tiny prints, what we call calicos, and the little plaids and prints that they had on her as her costumes. I just loved them, and it was kind of like the combination of the Regency style combined with the Victorian style. And I guess it was about 1835 that it was written. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up for sure. And I just loved the countryside. There were several scenes. I'm going to try to get screenshots for you of the countryside, and they did a really good job of imitating what was in the book, the descriptions of the country. And so Molly gets to be around 17, and the young men that work for Mr. Gibson in the pharmacy connected to his practice, his office there, one of them gets an eye on Molly and tries to sneak her a note, and Mr. Gibson intercepts it. But Molly and Mr. Gibson have a wonderful relationship. Even though he's a widower, she doesn't remember her mother. There are scenes of them together having dinner in front of the fire and just enjoying each other, and they didn't have a crossword between them. But enter Mrs. Gibson. He remarries, and he doesn't inform Molly of it, that he's arranging to get married. He doesn't even tell her, which reminds me that a lot of 17-year-olds would have liked to have known when there's these big changes going to be made that they don't have any choice in, that perhaps they would have liked to have been told before everybody made the decision. And so he marries this woman that has a girl about Molly's age, and this girl is kind of impulsive, and Molly is a very good person. She has a good relationship with her father, and I noticed this because I had been thinking more and more about all these grieved parents whose children, when they get to be 17 or 18, start to change their values and go with the way of the culture, or someone has influenced them. So we see Cynthia, she doesn't quite influence Molly to the core, but she gets Molly embroiled in all of her shenanigans. And for the first time, I noticed when I was watching it again that her father, who had cautioned Cynthia about some of her doings in Hollingford and her relationships, and it was said that she was already engaged to someone, and she was getting Molly to sneak notes to him to try to break off the engagement. It reminded me of situations where maybe someone who's a homemaker or in a church or anywhere, any kind of where people are, is asked to do something like that, to pass information on to someone else or ask someone else something, and they get caught up in this drama of someone else's, and that's what happened to Molly. And so when her father found out that Cynthia had gotten herself engaged to someone and broke the poor young man's heart, he said, do you know what harm you can do young men when you act like this? You know, when you act like you like them and then you lead them on and then you break it off, you know, you can do much harm. Well, Cynthia was upset because Mr. Gibson had confronted her about this, and she started to cry, and she said, I'm going to go be a nanny somewhere, and I'll just leave, and all this stuff. She was really dramatic, and Molly, she was so loyal, and this is what happens to young people too. They can get pulled in to a relationship with a friend and be so loyal that they can't see good sense. They just can't see it. And when her father had told Cynthia she must not let that happen again, she cannot do that kind of thing to people, Molly said, "Oh, Papa," and she ran away and shut the door. And that had never happened before, and I'm sure her father was, the picture that was, the way it was pictured in this movie, was her father was like looking around because he couldn't figure out what happened, you know. His whole relationship with his daughter was falling apart. And of course, we could see it now that it was all Cynthia. Cynthia told her, I am as I am, and I gave myself up as a heartless baggage years ago. But she said, Molly, you seem like such a good person. I'm not so good myself. But she kind of messed up Molly's life, and I often thought that when I watched it over the years that she had discovered that Molly had a special relationship with the Hamleys because her father, Dr. Gibson, had decided to let Molly go take care of Mrs. Hamley because she was sick, and they were the farmers at the um, Hamley Hall. And they had two sons about Molly's age. One was Roger and one was Osborne. Osborne was more of the intellectual one, went to college, but led kind of a quiet, mysterious life that his father knew nothing about. And Roger was the one that was interested in bees and going fishing and plants and different things like that. And so when Molly went to stay and help Mrs. Gibson, she got acquainted with these two young men. And so the rest of the story is about the interaction of the Gibson family and the Hamley family and all the ins and outs of that. And so eventually Molly realizes that she's losing her grip on her friendship with Roger, and she loses Mrs. Hamley. But I like it that Mrs. Gaskell had a vision that all of her characters would turn out okay in the end. And so if you're watching this with your daughter and they have never seen it, you need to watch it first and then explain what is going on. Pause it every now and then and explain. I used to pause it and say, well, you see there, of course, when we're looking at costumes, we would pause it and sketch the costumes and try to reenact this story in some way. And when I come across chapters in here where they're doing something, I will try to reenact that, for whoever's here and or for myself, and have a wives and daughters reenactment day. Do what they did, eat what they did. I'm still wanting that recipe for Molly's cake, the one she brought in one of those scenes. It was about that high, and it was on a pedestal, and she brought it in. And I like to look at the backgrounds and the architecture and the arrangement of the inside interiors of the different places that they were. There was at the Towers, which is where Lord and Lady Cumnor lived. Molly got invited there when she was 17 to a dance, and it shows so much of the inside of that wonderful palace. I don't know where that was filmed. And so towards the end, it always looks like Molly is the loser and Cynthia is the happy-go-lucky person, and everybody likes her. So you've really got to guide yourself and guide whoever you're trying to mentor through this film, and not let them think that Cynthia is really somebody to be admired, because Molly was the one that remained stable and remained steady and remained faithful to the one that she loved, and she didn't go after anything else, and she just kept real loyal to her father and to the principles that she was brought up in. But there were a couple of times when Cynthia got her kind of messed up, which makes me realize that yes, today you can get a young girl or a young man who will get a friend, and they have differences with the parents because this friend has distracted them and influenced them. And this is what Cynthia did to Molly, and she was chastised by Mr. Gibson and for being a flirt and a jilt, he said. And he said, do you know how much harm you can do to a young man when you treat him like that? And I thought that was really interesting, because people always talk about, girls with broken hearts, but what about what girls like Cynthia do to boys, where they lead them on and get them all interested, and then they jilt them. And he said, "You've been a flirt and a jilt." Well, Cynthia didn't take too well to that. She's the stepsister. Um, she's the daughter of his new wife, and she said, "Well, I'll just go become a nanny somewhere. I'll go to Russia." And she just was exaggerating and everything. And it's true, when people are in the wrong or they're doing wrong, they tend to exaggerate. And so Molly had never had a cross word with her father up until this time, and in the story shows them in perfect harmony. But with Cynthia in their life, now Molly says, "Oh, Papa," and she closed the door. And her father was just so stunned, and with all this going on all around him, and they weren't used to that. He wasn't used to his house being in an uproar. Molly was always easy to get along with. He and his daughter had a quiet life. And you can see why the Bible says to live a quiet life. We're not supposed to have a house in an uproar and people arguing all the time. It's not supposed to be like that. And you just show me where it's supposed to be like that. And so that's one thing that's very, very disturbing. And you as a parent probably know that's very disturbing when someone decides to start an uproar. We're not used to that. We don't know how to answer them because that's not what we were preparing people for. And so eventually Molly gets caught in trouble with her father again. Now she's at odds with her father again. And it's so sad to see this happen, but it's just the way life is sometimes for people if they're not careful about letting others suck them into these problems. And she was passing notes to this Mr. Preston for Cynthia. And then the gossip got around Hollingford, and it got back to her father, and her father called her in to talk to her, and he said, "What am I going to do about all this gossip?" And she said, "I don't know, it's somewhat like tooth drawing. The pain will go away after a while." But her father said, "My little girl, whatever has she done to deserve all this maligning of her character?" And the Miss Brownings were in on that. They were disappointed in Molly, and that was when Lady Cumnor called Claire, the mother, in and on the carpet, and told her, "You have spoiled that girl till she does not know her own mind." And Mrs. Gibson had no clue. And this is true with our generation too. Sometimes the parents are the last to know when everybody else knows somebody or something someone has been up to, and or a friendship someone has, or something like that, and the parents are the last to know. That's not a good thing at all. And but Elizabeth Gaskell liked for her characters to end well, and the story does end well, and it's very engrossing, very intriguing, and it shows there's a lot of tears, but there's a lot of good times too, and there's a lot to be seen in this series here. So if you've just got this, then you can start looking at it and enjoying it, and watch it several times to pick up different things. You can pick up the music, the color. For instance, I noticed one time when I watched it that there was a special tune for whenever there was a scene with Roger. When Roger was in the room, there was special music that kind of said Roger was his personality. And when Roger and Molly were together talking or walking or whatever, there was another tune that was always played. And when Cynthia was around, the music was a little more jolting because she had that kind of personality. And so I thought that was interesting how they matched up the music to the character and color and everything. And all in all, the only things that I didn't like about it were these wacky hairstyles, but they only wore those when they were at a party. And but there were several scenes that I liked, and would make great paintings. And so, ladies, this is there's probably a lot more that I could say, and I will read the names of the chapters, some of the names of the chapters, so you'll understand what's going on here. The Dawn of a Gala Day, and I read that to you out of the book. A Novice Among the Great Folks, Molly Gibson's Childhood, Mr. Gibson's Neighbors, A Visit to the Hamleys, Drifting into Danger, The Widower and the Widow, that was when Mr. Gibson proposed to Hyacinth, A Crisis, Making a Friendship, Preparing for the Wedding, Molly Gibson's New Friends, Molly Finds Herself Patronized, yes, The New Mama, The Bride at Home, Trouble at Hamley Hall, Mr. Osborne's Secret, Cynthia's Arrival. See, everybody had a secret, and it really exposes how much damage that can do. Mr. Gibson kind of withholding from Molly and not telling her his plans. Of course, it's hard for us parents, isn't it? Because our little boys and our little girls, we just kind of think they're always little, and that we just make our own decisions. We didn't consult with them when they were 2 years old, and so we just never consulted with them. However, as mine got older, I would talk to them about why I was doing something, or all my thoughts and everything, so they would know what was going on. And so they reach the age of 16 and 17, and the parents are making a big decision to move or something, and don't tell their kids, and their kids have a fit. You could see why she would be upset about that. And then there's the father and his sons, Mr. Hamley and his two sons, and that whole relationship plays out in here too, and that's really interesting. He really loves his sons, but he's really disappointed when they keep secrets from him. So Osborne has a secret because he has a wife and a child, which he knew his father would disapprove of, so he just didn't tell him. And I'm trying to think. Of course, Cynthia has her secrets, and this kind of messes everybody up, but they cope with it, and they manage. It seems like Mr. Gibson is the most stable of them all, and I liked Lady Cumnor from the Towers. I really liked her. She's the one that couldn't say her R's, you know. She's been engaged all this time to Mr. Pueston, and so that is probably all I need to say about that. And I hope you can find good character examples in here. It's such good teaching. And if you do have a daughter who's watching this, or a son, you need to tell them that there is a big difference between the personality of Cynthia and Molly, and that Cynthia tends to be a little more shallow, and that Molly takes things very, very deeply. And Mr. Gibson, he gave Cynthia the benefit of the doubt. He said, I'm not sure she takes things as seriously as Molly, but all in all, I think she's okay. So you will notice some things like that, and in the end, there's some sorrow, but then there's happiness that follows. And in the end, Mrs. Gibson, they're having a garden party. That was the last scene in the book, was the garden party. The editors of the video added another scene afterwards that wasn't written in the book. But the garden party was the last chapter. And Molly was married to Roger, and Cynthia was married to somebody else, I guess, and Mrs. Gibson said, you know, riches are a great snare. When I was Cynthia's age, I only had one servant or something, and Cynthia has 3 servants and someone to take care of the horses and all this, and she said, riches are a great snare. And Mr. Gibson looked at her and he said, you should be thankful you were spared the temptation. But the last scene really was supposed to be the garden scene, and it showed this harmony between all these characters, between the Hamley family and the Gibson family, which is mainly what it's about. It's about these two families that intermingle and all the things that happen to them, and some of their disappointments and some of their joys. But one of the reasons I liked it is she said in the beginning of the book, it's an ordinary, an everyday story. And that's all I wanted. I did not want to read about women who wanted to be great. I wanted to read about women who wanted to be good and wanted to be happy and wanted to find love and wanted to settle down and in the home and have children and share a life with someone they loved. And it ordinary, just ordinary, not people that wanted to go to the moon. But it had to be something that my daughter could read, that she would know, that was in her reach too, that all of us could do. And that's one of the reasons that I liked it, is because it is an everyday story. And you could tell one just like that. Everybody could probably tell one just like that would be just as delightful. So ladies, I hope this has been helpful. And for those of you who want to know what it is about, when you get finished with each video, you might want to write or analyze it, and it's worth watching more than once. So stay close to Christ. I'll talk to you later.